A Rockford lawmaker pushes new legislation to combat medical misinformation across the state. If approved, the proposal would create a new unit within the Illinois Department of Public Health. WIFR's Miriam Niesmeyer talks with the bill's Democratic sponsor about what this could mean for the future of medical information and a state representative Republican who opposes this plan.
State Representative Dave Vella sponsors House Bill 4596 called Combating Health Misinformation Act. It would establish a health misinformation response unit within the Illinois Department of Public Health. State Representative Dave Vella introduces the Combating Health Misinformation Act, which would create a team within the Illinois Department of Public Health to monitor and counter inaccurate health information.
Before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, we've gone through a lot of misinformation about medical stuff, right? And I think people have gotten hurt.
Vella says recent public health concerns motivated him to file the bill.
Whooping cough is up. We've had measles outbreaks. People are not getting the medications they deserve or need because they're either being lied to or misinformed. The federal government has kind of devalued the value of vaccines.
The Health Misinformation Response Unit would also recruit and train trusted messengers to communicate accurate health information.
We're creating a unit within the state of Illinois that really focuses, like a team that really focuses on making sure that when people get misinformation either from the internet or from other sources in government, that we are there to make sure that they know what's the true facts.
Republican State Representative John Cabello opposes the proposal, calling it unnecessary.
You can research all that stuff online without having a state agency having to put this stuff together. It's more tax and spend Democrats trying to spend more of the taxpayers' dollars for something that is not needed.
Vella says the bill focuses on empowering communities rather than telling people what to believe.
I think this is going to help people physically because, again, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Vella says the bill's next step is for the House Rules Committee to review it.
State lawmakers are scheduled to return to Springfield sometime in February.